Thank you. As former politicians, Howard Dean and I love these rallies. It makes us feel like we're back on the stump. But we're actually in the midst of another campaign. And it's probably the most important campaign that anybody can be part of in their lives. It's not a Democrat or Republican campaign. It's a campaign for human rights. It's a campaign to save innocent lives. And it's a campaign that's unified all of you in all of these many conferences that you've hosted and all of the distinguished guests that you've received. But the time for talking is running out. The time for action is upon us. We have seen too many times where we've seen what happens when you look the other way, only to see what you thought was going to happen. We have had too many examples of how indifference has cost lives. And this morning we are going to focus on making sure that we recognize the pattern so that we don't fall victim of repeating the same mistakes again. This morning we heard disturbing news from the UN Assistant Mission for Iraq, Martin Kobler. Martin Kobler made a pronouncement today. He told the residents of Camp Ashraf that they must accept Iraq's rule, that all of them need to be relocated to unknown locations without letting the UN High Commissioner on Refugees continue with his mission to interview and identify them as refugees. This perverts the very mission of the UN. It's disturbing for the United States, who guaranteed the protection of these residents and who is about to welcome the leader of Iraq at the White House on December 12th. So this morning you will hear from distinguished individuals about U.S. public policy and what is on the line with Nouri al-Maliki's visit to the White House on December 12th. It is not simply a head of state visiting our president, but it could carry the weight of the world's view of what kind of country the United States intends to be in the future. If what we see happen on December 12th and after to be nothing more than a repeat of what we saw in July when former Secretary Gates met with Nouri al-Maliki on the 27th, only to see the next day and the day after a brutal attack in 2009 on the people of Camp Ashraf. Iraq certainly knew what it was doing. Nouri al-Maliki knew he was using the imprimatur of his meeting with Secretary Gates as a cover for his intention to massacre the people of Camp Ashraf the next day, knowing that it would give him impunity to have just met with the U.S. Secretary of Defense before doing so. And if that wasn't enough, he met with them again on April 7th, 2011. And we all know what happened on April 8th. Are we going to see a repeat when Nouri al-Maliki comes to the White House on December 12th and then returns to Iraq to slaughter innocent people in a humanitarian refugee camp, using his meeting with the President of the United States to give him cover for what he intends to do. And let there be made no mistake about what Nouri al-Maliki and the Iraq government has said is their intention. The policy of Iraq is clear. They have enumerated what they intend to do and why they intend to do it. And at the top of the list, they say the reason they can do this is because of the classification of the residents as terrorists. That is their excuse. And there are only two people, two countries that are giving them that excuse: the United States and Iran. What kind of company is the United States keeping when the only other country in the world that's identified the PMOI and the residents of Camp Ashraf as terrorists are the Iranian regime and mullahs? What does that say about the United States' foreign policy? That we share the same policy as our mortal enemy, who has vowed not only to wipe Israel off the map, but who's already attempted terrorist attacks right here on our own soil. And rather than embrace the opposition to Tehran, the PMOI, we are joining in the condemnation in our official policy of the PMOI by continuing to list them as a terrorist organization, thereby giving Nouri al-Maliki the license he needs to go in and slaughter innocent people, because of course we all know they're terrorists. One of our distinguished speakers this morning is Alan Dershowitz, renowned lawyer and human rights activist. Among other things, he has been known to lead the challenge on anti-defamation. Well, it's defamation. It's defamation to call innocent people who have been disarmed in a camp terrorists, when the people who are terrorizing them threaten them every single day of their lives with murder. Who's the real terrorist? Well, this afternoon we'll talk about what is going on and why it reflects on U.S. foreign policy and U.S. credibility. Because with us today are a number of distinguished U.S. leaders in foreign policy and domestic leadership. And that is what our mission today will be, to bring some transparency to what it is that's happening right as we speak, and what it is that we can do as our nation to avert a humanitarian disaster, to avert a war crime. And that what we will say today is that before Nouri al-Maliki can step foot in the United States of America, not only must he disavow his license to kill, but he must say that he will give international monitors at the United Nations enough time to do their job. If he wants to be considered a member of the international community in good standing, then he had better follow international law and allow the UN High Commission on Refugees to complete their work, instead of demanding they all be scattered, isolated, divided, conquered, and murdered, which is essentially what his policy is today. Now I have the honor to introduce another individual who has a distinguished record, not only as chairman of the Democratic National Committee, as a governor, as a presidential candidate, but I wanted to highlight another thing, another title that he's worn, and that is physician, medical doctor. because all of us who are familiar with the service of medicine know the Hippocratic Oath. First, do no harm. So I think it's appropriate today that he speak to us, as he has so eloquently on many occasions before, about how do we take that Hippocratic Oath in medicine and apply it to public policy. First, let's do no harm. Let's not allow another assault and massacre at Camp Ashraf. Let's now hear from a real human rights leader, Howard Dean.